right. Good evening, everybody. Still feeling a little under the weather, but it's okay. Let's look at some of these comments on this on this this video I made recently. Why did the Satmar Rebbe oppose Zionism? So the first thing is what I noticed is that while most, if not all, Haredi groups do not accept nor support the authority of the state, the Satmar Hasidim, at least today, have an approach, in my opinion, of let the state exist if it wants to exist, but let it not claim to speak in our name. I would say that is something that I don't know if that represents the Satmar community as a whole, as much as it represents something that I know Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, who he grew up, he's a nephew of the Satmar Rebbetzin, but didn't really grow up in the Satmar community, but grew up in the shadow of Satmar, more or less. It was Ben Bias. He had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, sort of, in that community. And I don't know if this is really true, what you're saying, that most, if not all, Haredi groups do not accept nor support the authority of the state, meaning the state of Israel. Most of what they would call non-Zionist Haredim in Israel, not anti-Zionist, but non-Zionist, the Ger Hasidim, most of the Lithuanian yeshivas, Panovich, Demir, Belzer Hasidim, Bosner Hasidim, although Boston is maybe a little bit more pro-Zionist than some of these others, not only accept the authority of the state, but participate. They participate in the Knesset. Those who are taxpayers pay taxes. Those who are not receive funds. So they have representatives in the Knesset. This is something Lubavitch doesn't have that. I don't know if there's ever been a real Lubavitcher Chassid who is a Knesset member, and there's no party that Lubavitch supports unequivocally, even though I think most Lubavitcher Chassidim vote, but it's not really as much of an issue as it is in the other Haredi communities. Do you vote or don't you vote is often a very big question. Do you meet your responsibilities, your requirements with the army? Whether it is that you have a legitimate patur, you have a legitimate exemption from the army, and you file whatever paperwork is necessary, or you do your service, whatever is necessary. These types of questions, as opposed to the Satmar community, which will avoid all of that. They don't take any money, and they try not to even use Israeli money. They try as much as possible not to be Israeli citizens, although you have that to a certain extent, even in some of the more, I know one Yid, he's a Rosh Koilel in Slonim, American Yid, but he lives in Yerushalayim, and his children have, he was showing, he had a guest in his home, was in the Torah Karta, and he showed him, he said, look what you have, look what I have, my children, they have a piece of paper that says Lo Ezrach B'Yisrael. They are not Israeli citizens, even though if they were born there, they speak Hebrew, whatever it is. So he said, it was Chaim Tzvi Froyman he was talking to, Ish Yerushalayim, he calls himself. He said, you might have a Palestinian passport, but do you have a certificate that specifically says you're not an Israeli citizen? This is something I remember seeing at a Yontif Suda in Yerushalayim by this Hasidic Yid in Yerushalayim. But certainly, as far as the American community is concerned, I know that's something Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro echoes quite often. He's like, not in my name. Don't call it a Jewish state. Just whatever it is, but don't drag my name into it. Which is something, I think, people want to get into what my opinions are, which I didn't really discuss in this video. It was more or less I was explaining some of the basics, not in totality, because it's a very vast subject, some of the basics of the ideology in Satmar. I've heard, on the other hand, I remember there was one Hasidic Rebbe. Maybe it's not worthwhile for me to mention his name because it might not be in his favor that he said this to me. But I was talking to him about how a certain very popular Rav teaches the teachings of Rabbi Kook, and this Hasidic Rebbe, Polish, somewhat of an agadist. I think he votes, if I'm not mistaken, even though maybe he doesn't. His shver was more of from the Satmar ideology. Is that a Yid with a couple on? I couldn't tell. Anyway, this Rebbe said to me the only difference between Satmar and Aguda, essentially, is going to the Kosel and voting. But he says everything else they agree on. I don't think that's exactly true. It depends more on the different communities, So, like I said, the Vasa Slonim, Yerushalayim Slonim are very Zionistic. The Boston are very Zionistic, but they would identify more with Agudas Yisrael than with or whatever, Degel. I don't know what the UTJ, I don't know what these parties are. I don't remember which is which. Than they would with the Mizrahi party. So you have these various different approaches in various different communities. And here, I said that, I personally feel that Israel is a valuable ally to my country, the USA. I'm an American. It's the home of many of my fellow co-religionists, and it's on the land that my religion considers to be holy. That's my view about, we have to discuss what is the holiness of the Holy Land. The Mishnah in Kalim tells us it's a halachic issue. It's not a nationalistic issue, not even a religious nationalistic issue. A lot of people get confused because we're using Western English words to translate Middle Eastern, Hebraic, Semitic ideas. So to translate Malchus as a kingdom or a government, or Am as a nation, a people, is really not accurate. Because the idea of nationhood, as it came out of, I would say, 19th century nationalism, is foreign to the biblical mindset. It's not what it means. Now, the secularists, secular Zionists, or other secular movements within the Jewish communities, or that came, not really within, but that came out of the Jewish communities is really probably a better way to say it. They presented this as more like, they're trying to fit this round peg into the square hole, or square peg into the round hole, whatever it is. They're trying to relabel the Jewish community as being identical to the French nationalist or the Italian nationalist, when the truth is, it's really not like that. Now, a lot of these ideas have crept into the Middle East and the East, but still these countries, for the most part, did not have these same ideas that we have of nationalism. And if there's any form of nationalism that could really be compared in a way to the Jewish concept of the Am, of the, in a sense, it might even be the American way, that you do have, these ideas that are more That it's not based necessarily, even though there is an idea of being born American, and that the president has to be a natural citizen and so forth, on the one hand, which is the same, but there's also an idea of coming into becoming an American. But then I would say the United States of America is first and foremost an ideology more than it is a piece of land. And I would say Judaism is also an ideology. Yes, we have a land that is holy land, meaning that there are laws that apply there that don't apply elsewhere. The Mishnah says, Shemisham Evim is Shtei Alechem, Ha'omer v'Shtei Alechem, right? That these various agricultural offerings that were made in the temple in ancient times had to come from produce that was grown in the Holy Land. And so it's a religious definition. Although religion is also not really the right word either. Although probably with this, if you go into the etymology of the word religion, which means something that someone is bound to, that's the etymological source of the term, of the word, well then indeed, in a way, it would almost be apropos to call it the religious land. That this is a land that is bound in a way that other lands are not, as far as this religion teaches. So, but then I saw some people were asking, what's the answer then? How do we solve this problem? All the bloodshed, all the violence. I had a unique idea, which is also Caroline Glick's idea. I'm not saying this is a Satmar idea. This is Joe Kolakowski's idea. This is the Koblenzer idea. Although I zitter sich to call it the Koblenzer idea because I don't know if I can link this anything to the Chavas Yor. Maybe, because it's Maharal, that's more ideological, but not really. This is Joe Kolakowski's idea. I won't even call it Yitzchak Kolakowski's idea. Because it's a nationalist idea, but it's really not, first of all, it's none of my business. And Rabbi Yosheber Soloveitchik from Boston and from YU, not the founder of YU, by the way, but he was Rosh Yeshiva. He said that it's really none of our business as American Jews what the Israelis want to do with their country. And he's right. Putting that aside, if you want to know what my opinion is, it's that Israel should annex the land that they won in 1967, and develop, my feeling is, somewhat of a federalist type of system. Perhaps a way that would work, and this would solve many issues, is to have, I would say, at least 5 states that are under one federal government, like we have the 50 states of the United States, with a weak constitutional central government, and most of the power being invested in the state and then perhaps municipal, local governments. So, two of the states I would say would be Gaza and what they call the West Bank, Yesha, Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. Those could be 2 of the states, majority Arab states. And then the other 3 states would be perhaps majority Jewish states, which maybe one could be secular, one could be religious, one could be Haredi. I don't know if that could even work. Jerusalem would be kind of like how, and this would solve a lot of these issues. And really, the United States based this, the Washington D.C. is specifically not a state and not part of a state, right? And so Jerusalem would also be independent of those 5 states, and it was designed like that it's on the border of Benjamin and Judah to represent many different things. Not only that, but the 2 tribes of Rachel and Leah, of Rachel and Leah. So that's my. If you want to ask Joe Kolakowski, that's my recommendation: is annexation and federalism. So Justice Soul says, I agree that the land described as Eretz Yisrael is home and a place for all Jews worldwide. And even the most anti-Zionist Jew agrees on that. It's a difficult thing to say. Every Jew who believes in the religion in some form should have a religious devotion to this land, to believe that there is some connection, a spiritual connection to this land, and a spiritual, and more than the connection is the significance. But to say that it's a home and a place for all Jews worldwide, it goes against the biblical teachings. In the book of Jeremiah, the Navi Yirmiyahu, he says, pray for the peace, or the welfare, it's sometimes translated, but the word is shalom, of the city where I sent you. Because with their peace comes your peace, with their welfare comes your welfare. Meaning he was saying, be a good, loyal, patriotic Babylonian citizen, but keep your religion. Meaning don't give up being a Jew, don't give up your faith in God, don't worship the Babylonian idols, right? Be like Daniel and his friends, who stayed true to their faith, stayed true to the one true God, stayed true to their religion, but were loyal citizens, subjects, even in a sense friends to the powers that be, to Nebuchadnezzar, and those, as wicked as Nebuchadnezzar was, Daniel was a loyal subject and an advisor and so forth. This is the way that we're supposed to live our lives until Mashiach comes. A Jew should ask not what's good for the Jews, but what's good for the whole country. And in general, whatever is good for everybody is good for everybody. Okay. He says, Justice Soul is saying that the existence of the State of Israel is similar to the existence of Christianity. I agree with this very much. This is a mashal that I've used often. But I'll take it even a step further, which I was really mechaven to the brisker of. There's a story in the Bible. King Hezekiah was sick. Isaiah visited him and told him, you will die and you will not live. And then Hezekiah prayed and he repented and he was granted 25 more years of life. The Midrash, the homiletical teachings of our rabbis provide, even if it's a historical fiction, although it fits into the narrative very well, and it's generally accepted as most likely being historically accurate. This particular one, not all of them are, but this one, I would say, fits into an accurate historical narrative, was that Hezekiah was approached by Isaiah. Which sin was it that he was guilty of, that he was facing this punishment? And it was the sin of never being married and never having children. His failure to fulfill the first mitzvah in the Torah, which really applies to all of humanity in a certain sense, is Puravu, be fruitful and multiply. And Hezekiah, now you have to use a bit of a Gemara cup, like we say, to understand this, because it's a little bit the opposite, but it's similar in the same way. The message, just pay attention. So Hezekiah said, Isaiah, Yeshayahu, you're a prophet, I'm also a prophet. I was granted a vision that my son would be very wicked, and I don't want to have such a son. I'd rather be childless. Isaiah said, that's none of your business. The Torah says Puravu. Not only that, but the kingdom is supposed to go father to son. So even if you have a wicked son, you might have a righteous grandson. So, and that's what happened. You had Josiah, Yeshayahu. And it was true, Manasseh was very wicked, although he repented before the end of his life. And the Medrash says that Chizkiyahu said to Yeshayahu, said to Isaiah, he said, all right, I'm a tzaddik and you're a tzaddik, and you have a daughter who's available. Will you be my father-in-law, Isaiah? Can I marry your daughter? Maybe the merit of both of us together will make sure that we have, righteous progeny and things. Kachava, that's what happened. But they made the shidduch. Hezekiah married Isaiah's daughter, but their child was Manasseh. Manasseh, who, according to the legend, killed Isaiah. Even, there's a very famous legend that it's not in the Bible, but it's a legend that Isaiah hid in a tree or shapeshifted into a tree and was chopped up by Manasseh. Anyway, the reason I'm saying this is kind of the opposite thing. Let's say Lu Yitzur, the way we say it, maybe it is that the state of Israel is like the religious Zionists say, Reishis Tzmichas Geulaseinu, the first flowering of our redemption. But the Torah tells us, wait for Mashiach. Don't do this. Don't break these oaths. So, even though it's like kind of the opposite thing, meaning Hezekiah felt like, well, he doesn't want to have an evil son, so he violated the Torah, didn't get married, didn't have children until he did. And here the opposite, you could say, oh, the Mashiach is going to come through this way of Zionism. The Zionists are going to bring Mashiach, they're going to say. I'm not saying this, they're going to say. So don't take it out of context. Doesn't matter. We are bound by what the Torah tells us. We're not supposed to participate in such a thing. So, And so too, we can point to the Rambam, although it's been edited, censored out of some of the texts, but it's printed in most of the Rambams today. The Rambam says something very interesting about both Christianity and Islam. That even though the Jewish community suffered from persecution from both of these communities, from the Christians and the Muslims, both Christianity and Islam were good for the world because they spread God's word, even if it's in a corrupted form, to the world. So when the real Mashiach comes, the world will be ready, because they're going to have an idea already what it's not just some obscure, people somewhere on the eastern end of the Mediterranean, or even some very small minority religion that goes all over the world but doesn't proselytize very much. It's not like that. These are big major world religions, and so everybody heard this message. And so even though they have this perverted message or corrupted message, whether it's Christianity that added to our scripture and had a corrupted theology, or it's Islam that has a proper theology but a corrupted scripture, a false prophet and so forth. Either way, they've made the world ready to receive when the real Mashiach comes, because they're not worshiping Zeus or Thor or Odin or something like that, And even if some people went back to that, those people that went back to that have been Christians for the past 1,000 years, right? Maybe more, 1,500 years. And now, all right, they want to be edgy and different, so they're trying to go back to something that's been lost, and to the point where everything that these people now they know about those things, they know from books that were written by Christians. The irony of that these people who despise Christianity so much consider themselves victims of Christians who imposed a Jewish God on the people of the North. All they know of their mythology is from things that were recorded by Christians, but it's something else. But anyway, in a sense, the Rambam is saying that Christianity and Islam are parts of the Geula process, parts of the redemption process, parts of the process of bringing the real Mashiach and making the world ready for the real Mashiach. So, does that mean that a pious Jew should therefore donate to his local church or mosque because it's helping Mashiach come? Of course, that's absurd. Of course, we don't do that. If they're raising money for the poor or something like that, maybe yes. Once you already gave your meiser to a Jewish organization, even the Choimish, you want to give a little bit, a donation to. Maybe you could do that. It's a machlikas. I know not everybody agrees. Or if the Jewish organizations want to give to the poor people of other religions, that's okay. That for sure is okay. The Mishnah tells us that. Anyway, see what you're saying. And then you say, nothing has a taste. This is very sad. Nothing has a taste anymore for me. Nothing feels fulfilling anymore. There is no longer any more joy to anything. We built a world of vanities at the cost of our very souls, only for it to be taken down to earth from up high in the sky in an instant. This world is so tiring, mentally, emotionally, physically. I yearn for the competition of its creation. Not sure if you meant the completion, when we can feel, see, and experience that which is beyond our sight. That's a very prophetic word, if you don't mind me saying. You have a prophetic voice. That's within the spirit of what our prophets taught. However, I feel sad for that. Because and yes, Yirmiyahu Navi, the prophet Jeremiah, Yoel Navi, the prophet Joel, Chezkel Navi, the prophet Ezekiel, they spoke like this, and they felt what you're feeling. But I'll tell you something. Reb Nachman of Breslov said sometimes we need a little bit of silliness. Sometimes we need a little bit of foolishness, narishkeit. If there's something that you enjoy in this world, enjoy it. As long as it's permitted. You mentioned that you're not Jewish, whatever that means, because you certainly talk better than most Jews. And I would encourage you to convert to Judaism if you recognize the truth of Judaism. To remain as a Noahide is a pointless endeavor. It should at least be a goal to eventually convert, and you should do it as soon as possible. This idea of this Noahide movement, that is not really born in history. And my Rosh Hashiva pointed out something very profound, that it's almost impossible to really keep the 7 laws of Noah properly. It's a very difficult system to follow. It's much easier to follow Judaism than it is to follow with the 613 commandments than it is to follow the 7. Because the punishment for violating the 7, according to the Rambam, other Rishonim disagree. Generally, Paskin, certainly the Sheva Mitzvahs, the Psak generally is following the Rambam, is the slightest infractions are capital offenses, to the point where it's almost impossible to avoid a capital offense. So if someone believes that the Torah is true, there's no point in just remaining as a Gentile. You should do the most you can to become a Jew. That's the tachlis, my Shiva said. That's Rabbi Moshe Lazarus. That's the great purpose of the Jewish of any human being, is if you believe in the Torah and you can be frum. Now, if you can't be frum, if you're going to drive on Shabbos and not eat kosher, then you should not convert. Unless by not converting, perhaps you're causing a Jew to sin. If you're in a very committed relationship with someone Jewish, you should convert. I know a lot of people say that's not true, but a lot of Gedolim who held that. But even so, if you're going to convert, you should keep Shabbos and kosher, at least the basics. You want to be lenient on the interpretation of what it means to keep kosher or what it means to keep Shabbos, but I don't know anybody who allows driving on Shabbos, although you might want to argue that it's a grama, it's not. it's a psikresha, but it's a psikresha the nichale. It's not the loy nichale. So it's certainly not mutter to drive a car. And any of the other malachas, absolute, and anything that's muksa, that's a clear din derabanan, you cannot do. Now you want to be lenient about electricity because it's a modern thing, and there were Gedolei Yisrael who were mater electricity lechatchila, and there were Gedolei Yisrael who asered it midarabanan, who asered it midaraisa, and there were Gedolei Yisrael who said it's a minhag not to use electricity. And elu ve'elu kemat dever lekim chayim, at least in the colloquial sense. You're gonna only eat kosher meat and not mix meat and milk, and only drink kosher wine. Be lenient in a lot of other things. Not everything necessarily has to have a hash on it. You can go on Rabbi Abadi's website and find what they say is kosher, and you don't have to. It is what it is. That's one part of it. Is maybe what you're looking for is conversion. The other thing, it's going to make that noise now. Maybe we can pause. Oops. The other thing, all right, that thing stopped clicking. The other thing is, so I encourage you to consider conversion and to convert, not only to consider. It's really, if you believe in the Torah, if they have some reason they can't convert, I understand. One reason I would tell someone not to convert is if they're in a loving marriage and their wife or their husband doesn't want to convert. I don't know if it's worth it to break up your marriage. Then you be a Noahide, and even you could be like Naaman, that he would go to the temple, right, of Rimon, the base Rimon, right, and he would prostrate himself there, and he asked for forgiveness. I would even ad kedei kach say, if you're a Noahide and you're married to a Christian, and just to be polite to your Christian spouse, you're going to go to church with them. That's really not the end of the world. I know it's, for a Jewish person, it's much worse. But still, I would still recognize that there's a reason. Let's say an intermarried Jewish person might, first of all, they shouldn't be intermarried, but I'm saying, they might sometimes go to church with their Christian spouse, and their Christian spouse might sometimes go to shul with their Jewish spouse, and that's that's the world. The same thing. The chief rabbi of England sometimes has to go in the church when the princess gets married or whatever. It's part of his job. He's the chief rabbi of England. There's a time and a place for these things. And they have what v'yesh lam al lismich, the chutzpah that they see in Galite, who some of them are not even Jewish, or they're Fisher Gerim, for 10 years they're Gerim, whatever. And they have the chutzpah to go say that the chief rabbi of England is an apikoros because he wished a happy Diwali to the Hindus. It would be inappropriate for the Summer Rebbe to do that. I understand. Or even for the Belzer Rebbe to do that. But if you're a chief rabbi, you have to sometimes do things different, than what the Chareidische Oilem does. Ve'elu ve'elu. There's room for some of these things, One of my rebbeim, he was best friends with the Monsignor in the church, and he said that when he was having tzuras with the shul, the priest in the church told the Catholics, pray for Rabbi so-and-so. Pray that he should be successful for his family and everything. So anyway, for your own mental health, and your emotional health, if there's something you enjoy in the world, go and enjoy it. People ask me, why, Rabbi Kolakowski, why do you have to go be such a mechutzev, have such chutzpah to go and advertise on the social media that you enjoy to go to these conventions, even if it means that I'm staying in a hotel on Shabbos or sleeping in an RV on Shabbos. I'm keeping Shabbos, I'm not breaking Shabbos. But people accuse me of breaking Shabbos, which I wasn't, right? I understand it's not in the spirit of Shabbos, right? And it's true in Shulchan Aruch it says you shouldn't be reading secular things or looking at secular things on Shabbos. I mean, I remember as a bacher, I spent Shabbos often as a chaplain in a nursing home in New Haven. So I would go to Yale, to the museum. It was free to walk around, and I saw Shakespeare's writings and things. And it was Shabbos, and we went for a tiyul, me and a friend of mine, and looked at Shakespeare's manuscripts or whatever they had there in Yale, in the museum, and other things in the museum. Someone said it's not really Shabbosdik, but sometimes some of these things, it could also be shtikaloinik Shabbos, and sometimes for your own emotional and mental health, you kind of need this stuff, so that's why B'davka I show that I can keep Shabbos and go away on a little vacation to somewhere that maybe is not so Shabbosdik, but I'm still wearing Big Day Shabbos, and I'm still keeping Shabbos. And so I sit there and I talk to people. I'm not buying anything. I'm not driving. I'm not turning on off electricity. I'm sitting there. Maybe they're showing a movie. I'm watching it, whatever it is. And it's an appropriate, clean movie. The reason I'm saying this is for your own emotional and mental health. Rabbi Nachman says sometimes you need a little bit of narishkeit, sometimes you need a little bit of foolishness. And I think Mr. or Ms. Just a Soul, not sure, sounds like a masculine energy coming from writing. You certainly don't have the bounds that if you're not Jewish yet, you're not bound by what we have, I remember there was someone, they weren't Jewish, and they're in the process of converting, and I said, I'm so jealous of you, because you could just get in the car on Shabbos and drive to Borough Park and go to the Sklener Rebbe's Tish and enjoy the Tish, and then drive home. You don't have to stay for Shabbos, go to the Baba Rebbe's Tish or wherever, Munkacher Rebbe's Tish, and here I'm in Queens, so I have the Ulam Arav go to his Tish, and I enjoy that, when I was a Bacher in Yeshiva, So the point I'm bringing out here is that if you are suffering like this, you need to fix this. You need to work on it. You need to find something, even if it's foolish, even if it's empty, to give you a little bit of joy. And I'll tell you, another thing that people have said about me is that I celebrate Thanksgiving often on certain years. I kind of feel like this year, like Ramosha says, don't do it every year. I'll be honest, I don't feel so thankful. I don't feel like I really, if we can find a kosher turkey, which we're having a hard time finding one, maybe Shabbos would have the turkey, because I heard there were Hasidic Rebbes who would serve turkey on the Shabbos after Thanksgiving. And maybe we have all the Thanksgiving foods, the stuffing and the mashed potatoes and the, apple cider, whatever it is. We have some very good local hard apple cider with the hechsher that we enjoy. So we can make Kiddush Shabbos morning on the apple cider, right? Put some turkey in the cholent. That might be all we get is maybe a wing or a leg that we can throw in the cholent pot, But anyway, but Sof Kol Sof, this Thursday is Chafal of Kislev, so it is a day of Thanksgiving. Have a Sudas Haidoah. But I feel the same way. I'm so upset. What's going on? Everything's falling apart. Now, on one hand, there's a simcha that everything's falling apart, because eventually, I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know if it's going to happen 20 years from now. But we all know that eventually Mashiach's going to come. Eventually, all these things that we have are going to go away, and we're going to start with something new. And so that's part of it. You know what? Maybe I should go get some more of that apple cider before I go to the shop. Because this liquor store is here. I'll tell you, the Rav Nosson David of Shalovtze was a Chassidish Rebbe. He was an Einikel from the Yiddish Kodesh, and he said, when Mashiach comes, they're going to pick up a bottle of whiskey and a little Rebbe like me, and say, with this we had Chizzuk to make it through. And Rav Nosson David was a big Rebbe, had a lot of Chassidim. But he said, with this, we made it through the Golus and were able to survive. And, that's what I mean. Just find something that gives you a little chizik, a little bit of strength, a little bit of happiness, and you'll survive. Don't give up. Don't be sad. Don't be miserable. It's not that bad. As bad as it is, it's not that. It was a lot worse, in the 40s in Europe. It was a lot worse. Are we maybe going there again? It could be worse than that in the future, but we're not there yet. We could still daven. We shouldn't get there. A lot of things. So anyway, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comments. We'll see you later. Right? How do I turn this thing off? This one?